Great, recording has started. Hello, good morning, good afternoon once again, and thank you so much for joining us. We're so grateful that you
Again, It is great to have this chance to talk to everyone and to follow up on what we believe really were a very, excuse me, successful pair of meetings that we held in Washington in April this year. So the high-level meetings this year for sanitation and water for all consisted of a sector ministers meeting and a finance ministers meeting. And as you know, those meetings are the culmination of a lot of preparation, a lot of lead-up work on behalf of countries and other stakeholders of SWA. And they also are a point of getting together to take stock and agree on actions that are now happening in countries as we move ahead. So just to give you an overview of the attendance at the meetings, there were 60 ministers and other senior representatives, including from other sectors, including 5 bilateral donors. There were 59 countries represented in all. As you know, the sector ministers meeting was convened by UNICEF on behalf of the SWA partnership, and the finance ministers meeting was convened by the World Bank on behalf of SWA. We had the sector ministers meeting at the Pan-African Health Organization and the finance ministers meeting at the World Bank. So just to recap quickly, in terms of the preparatory process, it really was quite extensive. And in many countries, it involves stakeholders from a range of different sectors. And when I say that, I mean not just government, but government also meeting together with civil society, with research and learning organizations, with the other constituencies of SWA. Notably the civil society group. It really ran from about September last year right through to the meetings in April. From a secretariat point of view, we coordinated a series of webinars, a bit like this one that you're taking part in today. There were 5 different topics covered, 13 webinars. We did them in English, French, and Spanish. And overall, we think in excess of 450 people took part in those webinars. In addition to them, we had bilateral calls between the Secretariat and about 31 countries. And we really feel that that participation was quite high. 60% of SWA partners took part, about 44 countries, and about 5 non-partner countries, because we also invited countries who are interested in joining the partnership and have already started that process of discussing with us. And, you know, as well as the general talk about the meetings that were upcoming and the agendas for the meeting, we also use this as an opportunity to zero in on some of the key issues that we talk about in the SWA partnership, including the building blocks for a strong WASH sector, including the collaborative behaviours that have been agreed, and of course the focus for this year's meeting, which was financing. So that's a quick summary of the prep process that we undertook in the lead up to the meeting. In terms of the meeting itself, there were a number of sessions, but I would think particularly I would want to draw your attention to the ministerial dialogues, where we focused on 3 different topics. In the course of the day-and-a-half sector ministers meeting, we had 1 ministerial dialogue on achieving safely managed sanitation services while eliminating inequalities. We had a 2nd ministerial dialogue on maintaining progress of the SDGs in the face of risks and vulnerabilities. So we were talking about things like climate change and disasters. And then the 3rd ministerial dialogue focused particularly on issues of financing. So what's next? At the outcome of the meeting and in the week following, or the week and a half following the meetings, we've issued the chair's call to action. The SWA chair, Kevin Rudd, chaired both of these high-level meetings, and in that chair's statement, we summarise sort of where we're going to next. So here's a quick overview. It was an idea that everyone agreed, the country partners were strongly behind the idea of strengthening the WASH sector by putting in place the fundamental building blocks. We also agreed that as well as robust country plans that cover those building blocks, there would be financing strategies to go with them. In line with the discussions that we'd had at the 2 meetings, there was an agreement, a general sense that we need to address inefficiencies in current systems and institutions, and to seek ways to address more commercial finance from both domestic and international sources. So there are ongoing country and partner level activities that we're looking towards, and I'll leave Setali to perhaps talk a little bit more about those. And we're also agreeing that there was at those meetings a reinforcement of the idea that an accountability mechanism is important for a partnership like ours. One of the things that our partnership can offer is the chance for partners to be accountable to each other. And we will certainly be looking at that as we move ahead. So just some highlights of the meetings. I'll run through them reasonably quickly, but we have the World Bank President, Dr. Jim Kim, who really who opened the Finance Ministers meeting, talked about both the moral imperative, but also the financial, the economic imperatives of acting on water and sanitation issues. We had the minister from Swaziland make a comment at the finance ministers meeting that summarised the outcomes of the sector ministers meeting. We had the chair that I mentioned, Kevin Rudd, SWA's chair, strongly behind the topics that were covered. We had Matt Damon representing civil society generally and his own organisation, water.org. We had Amina Mohammed, the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, speak very strongly on a range of issues, including women's issues and menstrual hygiene. And strong participation in both meetings from sectors other than government, so supporting countries. And as an example of that, this is Sheila Patel, representing civil society organisations, who spoke very strongly and very practically about the importance of taking action on these issues and the role that civil society, the contribution that civil society can make. So just generally, that's an overview of both the meetings. Setali, I'd be happy to hand back to you at this stage.
Thank you so much, Amanda. And thank you to those that have just joined in the course of Amanda's presentation. And to bring you up to speed, Amanda was giving us a summary of the two meetings and the outcomes. And she also touched on the call to action, which was issued by the chair of SWA after the meeting. And at this point, we want to check if there are people with questions. Please put them in the chat. Or if you have a mic-enabled equipment, please do feel free to take the floor and ask any question that you might have for Amanda for both in terms of what happened at the sector ministers meeting as well as the finance ministers meeting. So just take a second to check if there's anybody with a question that you would like to ask. Please feel free to do so now. Okay, I think we do not have questions. I think that's a sign of how clear the presentation was. Thank you so much, Amanda. And we'll move now to the next part of this webinar, which basically looks at some of the suggestions for follow-up on these meetings. We do realize that these meetings are a moment in time. They are not in and of themselves the end of what we have to do. They just seek to raise attention to the issues that we work on in terms of achieving universal access to water and sanitation, and they bring attention at a political level to those issues. But the main part of the work is in what happens after this in terms of the follow-up at country level, in terms of strengthening country systems and processes for bringing together multiple partners so that we could work together towards that common goal that we've all set for ourselves. So before I go very far into this presentation, I see that we have one question from Eric from Unilever. Amanda, that's a question for you, whether you can talk about private sector actors who spoke and what they mentioned.
after your presentation.
So we will come back to that, Eric, just after my presentation. And thank you so much for asking that question. And again, if there's anybody with an additional question, please do put it in the chat. We'll come back to that. So in terms of follow-up, we do realize that the main engine of progress is actually what goes on at the country level. That's the heartbeat of where progress can be driven. So we do encourage our partners and colleagues to work as much as possible behind in support of government-led processes to make sure that they are inclusive processes to drive progress on the SDGs. And what we have here are just simply suggestions, which also can receive a lot of support, and we do encourage that support from global partners to be able to provide the necessary engagement at country level. Our sort of purpose of doing this is to strengthen government-led multi-stakeholder engagement to catalyze progress on planning, financing, and systematic review of the Sustainable Development Goals. This is an agenda that governments have agreed to 2 years ago, and it's important that we sort of keep momentum on that. Second objective is to systematically engage the Ministry of Finance and National Planning on the financial implications of the SDGs to the sector, as well as to deepen analysis on the factors that are really necessary to drive progress in the sector. And those can be seen in two parts. The first part being the building blocks, and these are basically the what of a well-functioning sector. So we're talking here about sector strategies and policies, we're talking about financing, we're talking about having robust institutions, as well as the necessary capacity to drive progress. And then the second part of this well-functioning sector is the how of a well-functioning sector, which is basically the collaborative behaviors. And these look at how to enhance government leadership. And there are actions that are to be taken by both government and partners to make sure that government leadership is indeed in place, making sure that there are systems that are needed to drive progress. And these are country systems, for example, for procurement, for financing, for logistics, and others. And that there is sufficient, that there are sustainable financing solutions to achieve the SDGs, and that there's a system for review, for planning, and for monitoring, a system that uses evidence and data in planning and review of progress. So this analysis on the building blocks and the collaborative behaviors, we believe, is really fundamental. It is at the core of a rigorous sector that is focused on driving progress. And the last objective that we hope we can achieve in this process after the HLM is to identify areas for learning from other countries and partners and share these lessons. So if you think there is something that you're working on the SDG 6.1, 6.2, and those that are related to that SDG goal, you could feel free to share with us. If there is a lesson or an interesting story on building blocks or collaborative behaviors, we would be happy to share that, including also specifically on financing the SDGs. We see that this would be an important area of learning going forward. So if you have something there to share, please do feel free to let us know. In terms of the main blocks of suggestions that we have, that this work on strengthening the readiness of the sector for the SDGs, this work can continue to go ahead. So basically looking at the baseline for the SDGs, looking at the building blocks and collaborative behaviors, that analysis could continue to go ahead where it was not finalized. We had about 39 countries that shared with us some of their work before the high-level meeting, and they were at various levels of finalizing this analysis. And we think that it would be good for such countries to continue to do that if they looking at where they want to go in terms of their trajectory. And then the second is in terms of interministerial dialogues, and then I'll come to the third on advocacy. So just to explain a bit more on this, on the first one, which is on sector readiness for the SDGs. Before the high-level meeting, we had articulated this in 3 main areas. One was the SDG baseline, that it is fundamental to actually have a baseline to know where the country is starting from. And as indicated earlier, countries at various levels of completing this exercise, so it might be worthwhile to continue and finalize that exercise and put that information in front of ministers. And link that obviously to what the country's ambition is, where they want to be by 2030. And integrating that into national or sector plans in places where those processes have already started. And then the second block of work around sector readiness, we think that it's around the building blocks, as we've already been, as I have already highlighted, looking at what the bottlenecks are in each of the building blocks and agreeing areas of improvement, so that those issues that are fundamental causes of those bottlenecks could be removed. And then on the collaborative behaviors, analyzing current practices and agreeing on the intermediate steps to go forward. I will speak shortly about some of the materials and tools that could help in this regard. On the financing for the SDGs, it's fundamental to look at the investment needs that are required, the funding gap, and finding a sustainable way of closing that financing gap through better use of existing resources and through attracting additional financing. And if the analysis in these three areas is done, we think that it will be useful to have a constant way of conversing with ministers, so that they're constantly on top of this agenda and that their political power is brought to this agenda. And that is why we suggested then the interministerial dialogues, which we think are fundamental to happen among sector ministers. So this could be the Minister of Water, ministers responsible for water, sanitation, and hygiene. In some cases, those include ministers of health or other ministers that have a responsibility in this area. We suggest that constant meetings of these people would be very useful, but also getting these people to meet with their finance ministers, especially for those countries that have already done a financing plan. And if that has not happened, it would still be a relevant conversation to see how a financing plan for water and sanitation could be done. And some of the countries, or perhaps most of the countries, will be going into budget formulation processes in the latter part of this year. So it would be useful at that point to engage with finance ministers on financing water and sanitation, looking at public financing, but also looking at other resources for which support of the finance ministry might be required. And that might be external financing or other financing from other parts of the market. And we think that these sort of meetings between sector and finance ministers could really help to drive progress and create a mini high-level sort of a meeting atmosphere where these key actors do engage and bring their influence to the agenda. In terms of the proposed actions, we think that a consultation with the sector minister would be useful to provide a summary of the meeting and to share with them the next steps, but also engage with the sector minister to agree on when the sector minister could meet with the finance minister and embed these in a plan that could engage on the budgeting process, including the medium-term expenditure framework where that's applicable. And then we also suggest some focus taking advantage of advocacy moments, particularly aiming at raising high-level awareness on the bottlenecks in the sector. So these high-level advocacy moments could bring attention to the bottlenecks on the building blocks of collaborative behaviors, and these high-level meetings, these discussions on advocacy could also touch on bringing the key decision makers so that they actually are also aware of the gaps, and that could go as far up as the head of state, given where opportunities exist. And some of the examples that we're just sharing here are brief reports of the meeting or an event within the sector, and in-person meetings and other activities to involve heads of state or prime ministers and other main actors. We also suggest strategic and opportunistic events which could be planned early and also use existing events as major hooks. Just 2 days ago was the Menstrual Hygiene Day, but we know that in October we have the Global Hand Washing Day and the World Toilet Day in November. So activities could be planned around that, or they could be planned around the joint sector review where the country has that. In July 2018, the UN High-Level Political Forum will focus on SDG 6. So we think that even though it is quite a horizon that's still into next year. Thinking around that could start now, because countries will volunteer to be reviewed under the high-level political forum. So these are events that could really be used for advocacy, focusing on the main issues that we discussed earlier in terms of the SDG baseline and vision, in terms of the building blocks and collaborative behaviors, as well as financing that are really fundamental to getting the sector going forward. In terms of other support from the secretariat, we have available tools that could be used. The SDG costing tool, this could be utilized. It was shared before the meeting. If countries still need that, please do let us know if you need some support remotely in terms of how to use that. Our colleagues at the UN Water Glass have been very helpful in preparing country profiles on the collaborative behaviors. And about 36 of these have already been sent to countries. And if your country does not have this file yet, please let us know. This file would be very useful in those discussions on the collaborative behaviors. It is meant to be input into those discussions, and we're hoping that partners could emerge out of those conversations with ideas of what intermediate actions they want to take going forward. So this is not a static representation of what the situation is. It is actually meant to contribute to a dynamic conversation where action is agreed, and hopefully there's improvement towards a better application of these collaborative behaviors. We also have the discussion paper on financing SDG 6, which we had utilized before the meetings. We have this document now in French and Spanish, and so for colleagues that may not have seen those earlier versions, please, we do have those versions for you. We will continue with this series of webinars, and I'll talk about that shortly. And we're also keen to share country examples of what people are doing on any of the topics that we've mentioned above. And if you think there's something interesting that could be shared, please do let us know. And as we speak to countries through bilateral calls, we're also hearing things that they want to share with their colleagues, and countries that want to learn more from another country. For example, we were speaking to Sri Lanka last week, and they said they're really keen to hear also from Ethiopia about the One Wash national program in a bit more detail. So we're really hoping we could help to sort of be a matchmaker in sort of this process in terms of linking information and knowledge. I spoke about the webinars. Today is the first one after the last high-level meetings. We intend to have another one towards the end of June, where we intend to have countries discuss more on their planning for the SDGs. So if your country has already done a plan for the SDGs, this will be an opportunity to share that. If you are a partner organization operating at a regional global level, please do feel free if there's something that you think is worth sharing here on planning for the SDGs. This webinar will be specifically meant for that purpose. And then the third webinar will be on July 25 and 26. This will focus on strengthening country monitoring and review systems for the SDGs. We anticipate here to talk more about joint sector reviews, for example, and how they can form a very credible part of a process for reviewing information and using that information to drive progress. But also looking for other examples in that conversation on basically how countries and partners are intending to review progress on the SDGs. We will follow that up with a webinar in September, so there will be no webinar in August. And that webinar in September will look at sustainable financing for the SDGs. This will basically link back to the finance ministers meeting, but we also do realize that there are a lot of countries that are intending to take this work forward. For example, 7 countries say they want to develop financing strategies for the SDGs. So we hope to showcase some of these and hear some of the experiences of countries and partners in developing an SDG financing strategy. It may be at that point that there's something that 1 or 2 countries have got to showcase, or it may be that a number of countries are still doing it at that time. So we're really hoping to provide a moment for learning. We will follow that up with a webinar just focusing on financing of the sanitation target. This is important because we've seen that in the preparations for the meeting, a lot of countries were asking questions about sanitation financing, but we also see this as one of the main areas where there are a number of questions that still remain to be answered. So we hope this webinar can provide that opportunity. As we get into November, we hope that we can then discuss or get back into sort of these country processes and just pick some of the interesting examples and highlight some of those, and also offer an idea of the path after that moment. But this time, this is as far as we thought we could project, and to give people a sense of predictability in terms of the thinking, but also to offer countries and partners the chance to think through these topics and see if you want to share something interesting, so we can begin to work with you ahead of time in putting that in place. That's what we wanted to share in terms of ideas for the post-HLM, but we're really keen to get this conversation going with our colleagues from countries and also partners, to have a very open conversation and hear what else you think could be done. And we have a short document, which is 4 pages, that's going through the final stages now. We will put this out, but if you have an idea that you think should be put in here, we would be happy to hear some of those. So we'll open up the discussion now, and we have questions that already came in for Amanda. And so we'll get to those questions, also to give time to people who want to type, if you have questions on what I presented. And then we'll get back to these questions and get the conversation going. Thank you. So, Amanda, there's a question for you from Eric.
Yeah. So thanks for that, Sitali. And Eric, thank you for your question. You were asking particularly about the private sector interventions in the 2 meetings. And as you can see, I needed a moment to really collect my thoughts on this, because the issue of the private sector involvement came up at a number of places and a number of times, and was raised by various people in the course of the 2 meetings. So, for example, Mamadou Dia, the head of Aquafed, spoke at the finance ministers' meeting particularly, and he spoke about the role of the private sector in developing or delivering efficiency gains in the context of public sector oversight. But as well as that, there were many other moments. I would say during both the finance ministers' meeting and sector ministers' meetings, a number of people referred to the importance of regulation and regulatory oversight. And they also referred to the issue of delivering to customers what they needed, and to take into account, therefore, what it was that people were willing to pay for. And they talked about the benefits of delivering something that is acceptable and good service to consumers, who in turn will therefore be more willing to pay. And that the part of the issue about efficient services is to get into a positive cycle whereby good service is being delivered, and therefore people are willing to pay. They pay their fees promptly, and that in turn generates revenue, which can help feed into better service. So I would say that was a theme that came out through the interventions from a number of speakers. I also put in mind of the many comments that were made again in the course of the 2 different meetings about the role of commercial finance. And so, for example, Kate Antrobus, speaking at the sector ministers meeting, she works for Lions Head Investment Company, was talking about what makes an attractive investment, and what sort of things the wash sector can do in order to make the sector and to make investment in our sector attractive. So that was another message that came out, both sort of from and about the role of the private sector. And then I've touched on it a little bit, but the idea of needing affordable, accessible products. We talked a lot about moving people from, if I think of the sanitation issue, for example, we talked a lot about moving people from open defecation to basic levels of services. but then we talked about moving up the sanitational ladder, and for that, the importance of products and services that would be acceptable and encourage people to improve their sanitation setup. We had similar conversations around water issues. So there was no one sort of intervention that was the be-all and end-all in terms of the private sector. There was a number of different issues raised. I think, having said that, we've acknowledged in the partnership the need to continue to strengthen our thinking about the role of the private sector in the delivery of the SDGs related to WASH. And I would say that's still an area, that remains an area where, there's a need for greater focus. And I guess I would take this opportunity to mention to everyone on the webinar that the steering committee has a working group looking particularly at the involvement and role of the private sector. And that involvement in that working group is open to anyone in the partnership. It's not just limited to steering committee members. And so I would encourage you, if you're interested in being further involved in that discussion, to get in touch with me or Sitali at the secretariat, and we'd be happy to put you in touch with that working group. Because as we keep stressing, these meetings that we're talking about are just part of an ongoing discussion, and I think plenty more to talk about on the private sector.
Thank you so much, Amanda. And Eric, I hope that was clear. And if there's more clarification required, please do feel free. And for those that have got mic-enabled facilities, we're still happy to hear your voice as well. We have Majeda, who's just shared with us something interesting about what's going on in Palestine. Majeda, I'd like to give you the floor, if you're able to take it up and just share with us some of your ideas for taking forward this conversation after the high-level meetings.
Yeah. Hi, Sitali. Do you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay. So our experience was, we have in the country here a committee led by the Prime Minister Office, and we have also creating a working group working especially on SDG number 6. So we have all these, the ministries, relevant ministries, like the Minister of Agriculture, Environment, Energy, and all Minister of Local Government. We have representatives from these committees who are supporting in this one as well. We looked at our strategic plan.
Have we lost you? Majed, I think we lost you.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, you're back. Please go on.
Yeah, and we now looking here if we have it or we don't have it. So
Majeda, the line is breaking. It's really unfortunate because we were very keen to hear what has been planned in Palestine, but the line is constantly breaking. So just to give you a chance to reestablish the connection, I will check. I think we had colleagues from Zambia who would have wanted to share something. So Fidelis, are you with Selenia? Is Selenia connecting through a different line?
She did not connect.
Okay. So
we received the link very late, and I've sent that link to her.
I see. Okay. So thank you thank you to Majeda and Fidelis for letting us know about that. So we'll just keep it open as well. If Majeda will come back, that would be wonderful. If there are other people who would like to share their plans for how they're engaging with their ministers and how they found the HLM, And in terms of very specific ideas for going forward, please, the floor is open. Feel free to contribute. And we welcome the team from Brazil. So we just to bring everybody up to speed, we've just gone through the presentation of a summary from the high-level meeting, and also we've looked at some of the suggestions for taking this conversation forward. Mr. Abednego from Zimbabwe, would you like to take the floor? So
Thank you.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yes, I was just sharing that after the high-level meeting, the health minister called some stakeholders to come and discuss and try to give feedback on the high-level meeting, and also to discuss key WASH issues. And in fact, there is a second meeting scheduled for next week or the week after. Hopefully, the water minister will also be available, as well as the finance minister. So I think with these follow-up actions that you highlighted, I think we should get somewhere.
Thank you, Mr. Chigubu. So good to hear that, and we'll be happy to see if there's any additional information that we can provide to help with those conversations. But it's good to know that the sector minister, the health minister, already called for a meeting, and there's another one already planned coming up in the next few weeks. Is there anybody who would like to add anything? We've got colleagues. Abera, yes, please go ahead. Ethiopia.
Yeah. Thank you, Sitali. Just very briefly from our side, as you mentioned earlier, we are currently conducting the review and updating of the One Watch National Program based on the SDGs, goals 6.1 and 6.2, all the service level and the standard and all other issues are under review, and the next 4 years program is to be updated based on GTP2 and SDG targets. So consultants, both national and international consultants, under the leadership of the National Coordination Office, are started doing the job. On top of this, the consolidated WASH account, which is the major part of the One WASH National Program, the midterm review is already going on, and in the next 15 days, there will be a national workshop whereby all WASH sector ministries are to come together, all development partners, CSOs, and regional governments are to come together for validation of the review and updating. So hopefully in the next 1 or 2 months, we'll be finalizing the updating of the planning processes based on SDGs and GTP2 of the larger programs. So we'll be sharing the progress very soon once we come up with and generate the final report out of the exercise to share to other countries as well, possibly in the next webinar sessions.
Thank you, Abera. That's insightful. And as I was saying, we were speaking to Sri Lanka last week, and they indicated that potentially sort of the One WASH National Program is an area that they might want to pick some further learning on. So it's good to know you're going through that review, that we've strengthened the One WASH National Program already. But I also just wanted to highlight what we're hearing from others as well. Peter in South Sudan, you're on the line and you've shared some input here. Would you like to take the floor? Peter, your mic is enabled now, so if you want to share what you've just shared plus other additional information, please, you can go ahead.
Do you hear me, Peter?
We can hear you very well, thank you.
Oh, very good. Yeah, after we came back from the HLM, of course, our Minister of Water could not attend the meeting, but the Minister of Finance attended the meeting together in my presence. And when I came back, I managed to brief the minister. Later on, she decided that we have to meet with the line ministries and development partners. So we started first with the UNICEF, and we had a meeting with the UNICEF colleagues, and then the minister, plus the bilateral German government who are based in Juba. And we shared the presentation that was shared in the HLM, and we came up with the suggestion that there is a need to have a bigger forum of meeting all the development partners, like the line ministries, in a bigger forum to update on the action that were published by the high-level meeting, by the two meetings, the ministers of sector ministers and then the finance minister. So there is a schedule of that meeting with development partners, plus the line ministry, that are headed by the Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation. This is the activity that is already started, and we are going to update the forum in the future to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And you bring in an interesting aspect of also this conversation with other partners at the country level, the development partners. So that's good to hear. I think we have also other partners on the call in case they're thinking of anything or doing anything. Please feel free to also join in the conversation. I just wanted to check. I think we had Rashid in Pakistan who wanted to share, who shared something. So Rashid, do you want to take the floor?
Yes. Hello, Scully.
Yes, Rashid, we can hear you.
Hi, yeah. Thank you very much. Actually, nobody else from Pakistan, I think, is attending the meeting. So I can share some information from Pakistan. So, yeah. Is there anybody from the ministry of is participating in this webinar?
They will be on a later webinar that will start around midnight New York time. That should be maybe in about 10 hours or so for you. But we're happy to hear any insights from you, and then they will also share with the other group of countries that you have.
Yeah, actually, during last few days, it was on 25th of May, the Ministry of Climate Change in Pakistan held this post-HLM meeting, where that slide was presented, which was presented by our minister in the sector minister meeting and discussed in detail. And then from UNICEF, Mr. Kitka presented the detail of the HLM before all the participants of from sector. And he was of the view that the meeting, sector minister meeting was went well, but the meeting of sector ministers with the finance minister was not, that successful, because there was a very little number of finance ministers who attended the meeting. Otherwise, he briefed us about the different sessions held during the HLM and informed the participants that the things which were discussed. So overall, the people from different organizations were briefed about the proceedings of the HLM. Now we are thinking to hold a dialogue after this Ramadan, because in Pakistan we have started this fasting month. So after that, we will hold a dialogue in Pakistan to devise an action plan as a follow-up activity for helping or supporting the government in preparing financial strategies to meet the SDGs. So this is our plan in Pakistan that we will and the second thing which I know is that Dr. Saima has sent you a comment on the glass report, which you have already sent to the glass team. So this is the update from my side in Pakistan, which I know about this process, SLM.
Thank you, Rashid. That's a very insightful hearing both the feedback from the two meetings and also the meeting that has already happened, but also the forward thinking, and that's what we're hoping we could get out of this call, to have conversations on what next and how to use these two meetings to continue with the momentum that's going on. So that's good to hear that. At this point, I want to just check with our colleagues in Brazil and see if they want to say anything. Otherwise, we should still be open for a few minutes before we think of bringing the call to a close. But I wanted to check whether our colleagues from Brazil wanted to say anything, or whether there are other partners or countries that have got a question or further contributions to this discussion. Okay, thank you so much. It looks like this is what we had to cover today, and I think it's okay. So from Brazil, we're just getting sort of the delegations, the people that are on the team there. Unfortunately, we're not able to come to the webinar. But before we close the call, I want to remind everybody, those who haven't typed their names, to put their names in the chat. And I also wanted to give Amanda just some space to say a few things, and then we should bring this call to a close. Amanda.
So thanks, Titali. I guess from me, the most important issue is just hearing some of the feedback from you in countries about the follow-up that's happened since the meeting. Some of those discussions between different ministries, actually convened by the ministers themselves, and involving in some cases other groups, including the development partners in country. I think, you know, as we look at the success or otherwise of the meetings, for us it will be very much to do in terms of what happened afterwards. The meetings will be considered, in my mind, certainly a success if they were successful in promoting, helping stimulate that further and ongoing dialogue in countries. If what the ministers discussed in Washington can have an impact on their thinking about how to adjust programs in their own country, if they feel they learned something that they could apply, for example, or if they were stimulated to look at a particular issue that perhaps hadn't featured largely in their planning. So that's the part I think is most exciting and encouraging, and we'll be continuing to look into that and trying to share experiences between countries about that. So basically, just to say thanks again for all the input. I know that many of you that are on the call today are the people that helped to make the discussions in Washington so meaningful, because you are the ones that helped prepare your delegations for participation, etc. So if there is success coming out of those meetings, it's largely thanks to you guys. So again, thanks for being part of this sort of ongoing discussion and helping us as a secretariat to coordinate. Our role is simply to coordinate and to try to support what you're doing. So thanks again for that.
Thank you, Amanda. And we appreciate, again, those of you that are just going back in the chat to give us the details of the people you're with. We have received the details from Rwanda and other countries, Ethiopia, so that's good. And as Amanda has said, this is to contribute to further discussions. So the next webinar will be on the 27th and 28th of June. And for Rashid, who is in Pakistan, we're having the next one, like I said, in a few hours, several hours from now, which will be for mostly Asia and the Pacific. That webinar will be in English as well. Tomorrow we have the Francophone and Spanish webinar for those that might have colleagues that are interested in those. And then we'll share the materials, which are the PowerPoints that we have used today. And we will also share the 4-page document that I spoke about, which has got these ideas that we discussed. And one of the key things to indicate at this time is that if in your country there's a change, say, at ministerial level, you could request us for a letter that could just congratulate the new minister and indicate what SWA partners are doing, and just put forward the SWA framework to the minister, and hopefully that can help contribute to getting those new ministers on board very quickly. So I just wanted to share that because some countries have done that and they've used it to engage with us to get a letter that goes to their ministers. And in case their countries in that situation, please feel free to let us know. For this time, if there are any questions after this call, please send an email. And we're happy to do bilateral calls. We've had some of these already after the HLM. And for those that are interested in doing that, we'll be happy to do that in the coming weeks. Please let us know. Thank you once again, and do have a good day. We'll bring this webinar to a close now.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much, Susan. Bye. We thank you very much for that. استقلال كسيارة نحن مسلمين.
Is the availability of reliable data? Reliable data. ariko nitwigira ikindi another problem
no لم يتقبل لم يكير مسرا فين يا رجل